So we got approached by Solana Foundation and a couple other DeFi ecosystems to essentially do this, right? They saw what we did with zenBTC and they're like, could you guys do this with zenZEC? We scrambled. We were like, let's see how we could do this. The launch day was nuts. I mean, we were not even expecting it. When I woke up, I was like, Jack, like, tell me what's going on. Like, talk to Sasha, our CTO, talk to the developers. Let me know, are we going to be able to launch by 12? Are we going to be able to launch by 3 p.m. Eastern?
The social media rampage that was the 31st, that Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, retweeted by everyone in Solana pretty much. Maybe just kind of listen.
Yeah,
up.
I mean, everyone, Solana, totally, Mert, all of our DeFi protocols across the aggregator level between Titan, DFlow, Orca, we did a huge campaign with. The incentivized pools are still up and running, so be sure to LP into those in order to earn Rock and Orca tokens. We had wallet providers making sure that it's verified on the front end between Flare, Phantom, Backpack as well, right? So, getting that coalition of the willing across one product is very important, and frankly, I was not expecting that much that much of engagement with the launch.
Yeah, it was fun watching, first of all, the mints roll in, the retweets, the quote tweets roll in. And that's what we're excited to be sharing with everyone today. We are enabling zenZEC as collateral on Loopscale. Shout out to Loopscale, incredible team, very nimble. And we're excited to roll out a variety of different programs and incentive offerings. But at its core, this is the first time, to my knowledge, that Zcash is enabled as collateral anywhere in DeFi.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
It's incredible.
Welcome back to ZR Talks. This is episode 10. This is a little bit of a different format. It's just me and Adi today. It's a little bit of a fireside chat. Adi, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jack.
Doing well.
This is episode 10, right?
Episode 10.
Fireside chat, Zcash, zenZEC, Solana.
Yeah, so why don't we just jump right into it? I mean, since our last podcast, we launched zenZEC. We actually recorded the last episode before to kind of talk about it from like a launch perspective and to be able to have kind of our explanation of what we were doing and why as part of the launch. But let's maybe just start about the launch day. Like, that was such an exciting day for us. You want to just walk us all through it?
Well, yeah, actually it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the time we decided to launch zenZEC and what happened throughout that process, and then going into October 31st, right? It's Halloween on a Friday. So we got approached by Solana Foundation and a couple other DeFi ecosystems to essentially do this, right? They saw what we did with zenBTC and they're like, could you guys do this with zenZEC? That was a Friday, 10/10, October 10th, at like 3 p.m. Eastern time. We scrambled. We were like, let's see how we could do this. Spoke to our CTO and our engineers over the weekend. They started really mapping it out. And over the course of the next, let's say next week, we really got to a core MVP and then started doing testing, right? We rallied everyone internally to do this. Moving forward towards the next week, which is October, let's say 24th, right? 7 days before the launch. By the way, we didn't even know we were going to launch on October 31st. We were supposed to launch October 30th and then got delayed. But that being said, things happen in this developer world, right? We lined up every single partner that we had for zenBTC, for zenZEC within the Solana DeFi ecosystem. And, once you have all of the CAs, once you have actually the tech built, a lot of those conversations are quite easy to do. So the launch day was nuts. I mean, we were not even expecting it. When I woke up, I was like, Jack, like, tell me what's going on. Like, talk to Sasha, our CTO, talk to the developers. Let me know, are we going to be able to launch by 12? Are we going to be able to launch by 3 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah.
And every single person told me not to launch on Friday. And I'm like, I'm a crypto guy. I've been in this space for 6+ years. I'm on my phone every single Friday afternoon, scrolling through Twitter, looking for alpha, looking for news. So if I'm doing that, everyone else probably is.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just to take it back a sec even further, like this, like every other company, we have our tech roadmap, right? We're like, all right, we're going to try to get all these things done. And we just got this opportunity, really. It's such a big opportunity. Zcash, everyone at this time was kind of seeing like, okay, Zcash is going to be a thing. Privacy narrative, and we're going to talk more about it. Privacy narrative is going to be a thing. This is going to be big. And this is a real opportunity for us as a scrappy early company to do a quick pivot and take this market opportunity full force. And, we pretty much pushed our whole roadmap. We're like, we're going to move everything back a month and we're just going to execute on this. And yeah, I think it actually really does culminate on that Friday launch because, again, it's going against the conventional wisdom, but I think a large part of our approach is just like, get it out. Like, let's just build cool stuff, put it out there, begin like the Lindy process, begin the process of having people being able to try it, hear about it. Maybe they hear about it for the first time Friday afternoon, and then they see another thing about it on the next Monday.
And that's what happened.
And that is what happened, right? But maybe also like let's talk about the social media rampage that was the 31st, that Friday. I mean, retweeted by everyone in Solana pretty much. Maybe just kind of list out.
I mean, everyone, Solana, Totally, Mert, all of our DeFi protocols across the aggregator level between Titan, DFlow, Orca, we did a huge campaign with. The incentivized pools are still up and running, so be sure to LP into those in order to earn Rock and Orca tokens. We had wallet providers making sure that it's verified on the front end between Soulflare, Phantom, Backpack as well, right? So getting that coalition of the willing across one product is very important. And frankly, I was not expecting that much that much of engagement with the launch.
Yeah, it was fun watching. First of all, the mints roll in, the retweets, the quote tweets roll in, and seeing everyone like genuinely excited about what we were able to accomplish in a really short period of time. And it goes really deeply to our narrative of everything is going to trade on Solana, right? And for it to be the everything exchange, there needs to be every spot asset. Like that is just core fundamental. Every crypto asset needs to be at a trade spot on Solana. And you need to be able to do it without a wide variety of trust assumptions. There needs to be kind of one trust assumption that is decentralized, that is, distributed trust pretty much in the corest way of crypto, to be able to get to a place that everyone's going to want to use this product. And that's what we're going to do first with Bitcoin. We did, then with Zcash, which we've done, and now very soon with a lot more assets that people want to trade on Solana.
Yeah, no, and I think you put it well. I think it's a very big problem. It's a massive problem that Solana is dealing with right now, especially when you do a side-by-side comparison of what's happening in Hyperliquid, right?
Yeah.
There's this company, Hyperunit, that essentially enables spot assets to be traded on Hyperliquid. Then you can move up the stack and go into perps, etc. Solana lacks that, right? And we're really, really, at a pivotal stage right now, not only with Zenrock, but also for Solana and internet capital markets to enable these non-native spot assets to be traded on Solana. Setting up that initial foundational liquidity pool is extremely important so that you can move up the stack, go into collateral, go into borrow lend, right? Go into perps, go into all the different use cases that DeFi projects really provide assets with. So I think that's something that we're really focused on. We're focused on making sure that the foundation is very concrete before you really build up. And that's exactly what we're doing with zenZEC, right? Building out that first initial liquidity pools. And, I think we have some really exciting plans to enable Zcash to be used as collateral in order to borrow it in the coming week, right? So I'm not sure if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, let's jump right in. So I think, it exactly to your point. There's layers to making an asset usable and efficient on Solana. First of all, it needs to be their spot. But what we've seen time and time again in this space is that moving an asset spot to a chain and saying, hey, anyone can come mint as much of this as they want. Good luck, have fun. Like that's not enough, right? You need to then do a lot of the heavy lifting to actually integrate it into DeFi. And so we've kind of started this journey. If you look at like zenZEC, right? We launched it, I guess about 2 weeks ago now. And the first thing we did was enabled it. We enabled depth. We enabled liquidity by partnering with many players, aggregators, Orca, a big partner, creating incentives to provide liquidity into our made zenBTC, zenZEC pool and other pools as well. And we see, since this is a very in-demand asset, we immediately saw Meteor, Radium, and others spin up pools.
Yeah, how many of them were organic?
Yeah, I think, what was it? Last time I checked, it was like 7 of 11 were organic. We didn't even in any way help facilitate the pool creation, which is crazy to think about. I mean, the idea that would happen, I think 4 or 6 months ago, thinking about the idea that pools would just get spun up with our asset and then trade millions of dollars in like every day it just shows the power of bringing something that people actually want to trade.
Right.
But now we're moving to the next step. And we know, obviously, that just enabling spot is still in and of itself, though it is an improvement over what many people do, really focusing on creating a deep spot market. It's still not enough. The next thing that needs to happen is you need to be able to enable the asset as collateral and enable borrow lend. That is one of the most core primitives in all of DeFi, and that is the next step. And that's what we're excited to be sharing with everyone today, that we are enabling zenZEC as collateral on Loopscale. Shout out to Loopscale, incredible team, very nimble. And we're excited to roll out a variety of different programs and incentive offerings. But at its core, this is the first time, to my knowledge, that Zcash is enabled as collateral anywhere in DeFi.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
It's incredible. I think that's right. And echo your points on Loopscale specifically. Their order book architecture makes it easy for low volume and low liquidity assets to actually be used as collateral, right? And now you can borrow stables by depositing zenZEC as collateral, right? So that's huge. You will be incentivized via both Rock tokens and also Loopscale points, which really excited about. So I think that's very important generally, to add more distribution, bells and whistles to the assets that we launch, right? It's not just okay, great, the assets on Solana, now let retail figure it out, or let projects figure it out. We're actively the ones that are doing the business development work in the trenches, doing the hand-to-hand combat, which is a huge differentiator because we've seen it time and time again with other bridges that bridge assets over, but just let it kind of sit there and it's idle. But what we're doing is making these spot assets productive, or rather functional, in the on-chain economy, specifically within Solana DeFi ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. So the way it's going to go to start is we're going to have two vaults. There's going to be the zenZEC vault, which is going to tap into the zenZEC, zenBTC liquidity pool on Orca. And then also a zenBTC vault, which is going to tap into the zenBTC CBBTC pool, also on Orca. And then separately, there's going to be incentives for using zenZEC and zenBTC as collateral assets to borrow dollars,
right?
USDC, and then to potentially loop it to the extent that people want to get leverage on those trades, and or whatever else they may want to use their asset as collateral for in the composable DeFi ecosystem. Also, all of those activities are going to have 3x Loopscale points. So another good thing that you can farm, not only Rock tokens if you're a believer in our project, but if you're a believer in Loopscale, you can also kind of maximize your returns through getting points for that project as well.
And look, that's great. I mean, DeFi composability, earning incentives for depositing the asset that you hold is very important, and frankly, don't see a lot of other projects thinking that way.
Right.
I think it's kind of been, let go to an extent, or maybe it's more of a secondary thought of adding incentives, but it's our primary thought for doing that, because we want to incentivize the people that take the risk in order to deposit zenBTC or zenZEC in, let's say, Loopscale to start. We want to reward them for doing that, right? And I want to talk a little bit more about zenZEC and what's going on with privacy. I think it's a very interesting narrative. Maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about why we chose zenZEC, if it wasn't really a decision that we had a lot of thought in over the course of the last 2 months. We weren't really actively thinking about it, but it was really based on demand, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, our primary goal is to bring over the assets that people want to trade. We want to, I think one thing that is such a common mistake in the crypto space is that people have some idea of what users want, and then they try to force that on the users.
Yeah.
We try to take the opposite approach. We love listening to the people who are in our community telling us, hey, what do you guys want to trade on Solana? Anyone who has been paying attention has seen the demand online, in the charts, everywhere else for Zcash. And I think it's really important to think about, why is that? And maybe we can kind of segue into talking a little bit more in depth about privacy, right? Because it's a point, again, that's really important. There's this kind of 4 pillars theory that we've been kicking around, which I think is really, really interesting. It's like Bitcoin what was it? Bitcoin was the digital.
So this is the this
Yeah,
is
you
it.
you tell the fourth.
It's Bitcoin is security,
Yeah.
Ethereum is programmability, Solana is speed, and Zcash is privacy.
Privacy.
It's
Exactly.
the fourth core tenet to what crypto's ethos initially was.
Right.
Right. And you look back at 2010 in a lot of these Bitcoin forums, if Satoshi and Hal Finney had not only the resources or the know-how to embed ZK into Bitcoin, they would have done it.
Right.
Right. And it would have been, a core pillar of what Bitcoin is today, not only just the most secure and decentralized crypto asset, but also the most private. Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's why Zcash is really coming to fruition, right? And obviously, there are a couple reasons. The other reason that I'll say is just in terms of like network effects in Lindy, right? We think about that a lot, right? When an asset goes down almost 99%, but finds a way to come back up and survive from the death valley, that's an asset you probably should hold in your PA, right? Not financial advice, but
Not financial advice.
But it's a very interesting macro kind of thought that we've been kicking around as well.
Yeah, and the big piece of that is just the idea that, look, the people who have been building and holding in this ecosystem for the last 5 years believe in this ecosystem and this asset.
Yeah.
Right? And so you kind of have this situation where it's almost like a multi-year fair launch. Where you don't have to worry about this overhang of like, oh, is there, a massive VC that's going to try to dump on my head or like whatever else. It's like, no, these guys are like believers and they've had years and years to capitulate if they want to. And those who have held through that cycle are very unlikely now that the rest of the world is understanding what they've understood for a very long time. They're very unlikely to just turn around and say, okay, now I'm done because I got a small pump. I mean, it looks like it's been a big pump. If you look at the kind of 1 month chart, it's like parabolic, obviously. But if you zoom out, it's not like this thing is pumped that much. And
Look,
we compare it to assets like XRP, Cardano, and we're like, this thing has real use case, right? And I'm not saying those assets don't. We can all debate, think about what we think, but privacy is going to become more and more important the more of your life is on chain. That is definitively true. And Zcash is a way to be able to get privacy, to be able to, and this is for everyday people. You don't want everyone to have access to all of your financial information. We all know that intrinsically, especially people who are not crypto people, right? They say, oh, like, would you be okay with people just being able to see all of your bank transactions? Like, obviously not. Why would I ever be okay with that?
Yeah.
But yet, public blockchains allow that, and it's going to be this mixed ecosystem. This is a big theme. The last thing I'll say on it is like, this is a big theme we've been talking about, and kind of goes back to that 4 pillars theory, which is that different ecosystems are going to have different purposes. And Solana is speed, right? Solana is kind of going to be the everything exchange. Use your assets as collateral, use it very productively. And we believe Zcash could be this privacy asset that has such a large kind of distribution, and it is so kind of ingrained into crypto that it doesn't have to worry about some of the same things that maybe a new project would if it launched right now.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And one of the other points that I think we've been also kicking around is like, you can argue that ZECs or Zcash's moat, TAM, sorry, not moat, is quite low right now. This is an asset that's trading at a 7-8 billion FDV, right? It's come down a little bit from its highs at 9, but fundamentally, we think that it could probably become a $50 to $80 billion asset in the very short term, and it can just happen in a wick. But as you've seen in crypto over the past 2 years, really, there's been a massive wave of TradFi adoption, right? And what does that bring with it? It brings money. Massive capital inflows, institutional capital inflows that Bitcoin has never really seen before. It brings usage of B2B stable coins, and stable coin supply has been at an all-time high. Those are 2 positives. 2 negatives, maybe it's not a negative, but it brings a little bit more oversight. Right? It brings the fact that you have this Clarity Act, you have more eyes on transactions, right? You have more eyes on Bitcoin. And that's just the way like institutional level adoption really works. Everything becomes a little bit more regulated, which is great, right? We're not saying it's wrong, but given the optionality, giving users the optionality to really have their transactions be private is something that is so massive. I think a lot of people aren't thinking about. So the overall TAM of Zcash not only the protocol but also the asset could grow significantly, kind of adjacently with the way TradFi adoption is going.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that, you know, thinking about, okay, so where does Zcash fit in this whole big world of DeFi, right? Like, Zcash can be this kind of like privacy layer in a sense, right? Because Zcash is a Bitcoin fork at the end of the day. It's never going to have the speed or the programmability of Solana or Ethereum. It's going to kind of be this separate thing. But one thing that we are enabling with zenZEC is this ability to say, okay, I have maybe a wallet, and I can swap my SOL, let's say, into zenZEC, redeem it for underlying Zcash, put it into a shielded pool, pull it out of a shielded pool, and then go mint back to Solana.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you redeem 100 and then mint 100 5 minutes later, people might be able to see. But, you know, the more volume we are doing and the more transactions that are doing, and especially if a user is a little bit creative with how they kind of remint, you can create kind of this way to go from a known Solana wallet that everyone knows is under your control, right? Maybe you're sending money to all sorts of different people, right? And then move assets to a new Solana wallet that is private and do whatever you want to do with it. And it's not to say, you know, I think privacy gets a really bad rap.
Yeah.
Because people assume that there's some sort of malicious components of it. And it's not that. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about.
Yeah,
about
I mean,
that.
look, we're not like proposing crime. If you're doing things illegal, go sent to jail. Like, go to jail.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be doing things illegal. But outside of that, it's much bigger, right? Yeah, you criminals are going to do money laundering. They're going to find ways to obfuscate transactions of stolen money, whatever it may be. But they will be sent to jail. What we're really proposing is the optionality for the user. I think the option click private transaction or something along the lines of that could be massive for the end user. And look, we have plans even with the way our MPC is structured, the way our MPC works. It's a very flexible and malleable technology. I was talking to someone, you know, the other day, and we're like, oh yeah, MPC is only really used for custody, right? Like, I didn't know that it was used for an actual bridging tool, right? So MPC could enable many more different use cases outside of just necessarily like, you know, custody, which is what we've done, right? We brought it to the forefront in order to enable it for bridging, but it'll also be used for privacy and atomic swaps, etc.
Yeah, no, the ability for us to leverage the MPC to do a variety of different things is just massive.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to see kind of where the demand goes, right?
Exactly.
It's very much like a commercially driven thing. But I agree with you, and this is the big point. Like, a chain like Solana, again, for someone outside of the industry, it may seem like, oh, how could you ever know what's going on? It's so confusing, whatever. People who get it and are in the industry, like, they know that this is the easiest thing to track of all time.
Yeah.
Right. And so the point is like, if like, let's say there's some sort of like malicious activity, right? Well, everyone on chain knows what wallet that malicious activity is tied to. Let's say there's some sort of an exploit and SOL is taken out and now it sits in a wallet. Everyone knows what wallet that is. I think that the way that the future of like the on-chain world goes is like, on a place like Solana, we can say, okay, this is a kind of tainted wallet, and not really let it interact with any of the core DeFi infrastructure. However, for everyone else, for just your normal person, you should have the right and to your point, the option and the flexibility to make your account anonymous and private and not permanently linked to your identity for the whole world to see. Now, that still means that you will likely have to comply with local, wherever you reside. There's going to be some sort of government that may require you to disclose your asset holdings and your investment accounts, and that's just complying with your local laws, right? But in terms of, you know, oh, I just want, you know, I don't want everyone in the world to know how much like money I have in my account.
Yeah.
That is, everyone can agree that that's something that we obviously should have the right to have on chain. So that's really the crux of what this is all about.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think it's important also to let like listeners know is, you know, generally as we really scale up launching other DCTs, right, the first two assets that we launched and are very core to the overall foundation of what Zenrock is Bitcoin, which is the highest form of digital asset security in the industry right now, in the world. And you have Zcash, which is internet native private money. And also, at one point on Zcash, nobody knows that it's actually proof of work, 21 million. It's a Bitcoin fork.
Right.
That's extremely valuable,
Right.
right? There's no, kind of inflationary issues with other proof of stake systems that you see, right? So that's very important.
Yeah.
Those two core assets are very foundational to how kind of decentralized custody, decentralized security works, right? What we do at Zenrock via our MPC is we are enabling the user to really have trust with fewer assumptions, right? Less trust, fewer trust assumptions. And I think that's very important to also with privacy, right? You have no assumptions that you have to make if you want to make a private transaction on Zcash, right? So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that, it's kind of an interesting concept, and it goes back to this idea that we were talking about a little bit ago before the podcast. But this idea of the way that DeFi is scaling, I am extremely fascinated in. I think it's a really interesting topic. And take a product like WBTC, right? Bitcoin's Wrap Bitcoin, that's completely centralized product to one company. That existed in a point in time, and because that showed the value of wrapping an asset, that is kind of gave us the place to stand on and say, okay, we can do this in a way that's actually scalable. But they did it in a way that was not scalable, but at least it kind of showed how it was going to work, right? And so we're now taking a lot of these trust assumptions that previously were completely centralized and doing all of this stuff in a decentralized way and building for the on-chain future.
Right.
And again, we are always looking into the future and thinking about the world. I think that was my computer that just went off. Thinking about the world, that we're going to see, and we know that all of these assets are going to be traded on Solana, right? And it needs to be done in a way that actually works for the on-chain world. And that is not just going to be limited to Bitcoin and Zcash. It's going to be all assets. And if you're a user, speaking as a user of DeFi, right? The simpler things are, the better, right? If I as a user can just know that okay, all these I can pretty much buy whatever I want issued by Zenrock, and they have this much TVL and they have this much track record, that makes my life so much easier than having to figure out individual trust assumptions from every single potential asset issuer.
It's a really interesting concept that I've been thinking about as well. Is throughout history of really DeFi starting in 2020 and blockchains really starting with Ethereum, you've constantly seen an improvement in the way blockchains work, right? Started with Solana, started with Ethereum, then you went to Solana, you had layer 2s, constantly optimizing the core infrastructure. But the core assets that have been held were never optimized, right? We just kind of say, okay, we're fine. It has enough Lindy, it has enough network effects, it has enough liquidity for me to be comfortable as a user. And I do the same thing, right? If it's highly liquid, it's probably the asset that I'm going to go and choose to use in DeFi. But that's a very wrong concept.
Right.
In the long run, that's a band-aid solution for the short term. In the long term, it's very important to continuously upgrade these assets in order to make them sustainable for the long run in the on-chain economy.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. Nothing is funnier than hearing someone be like, "Oh, Zcash, the ultimate privacy asset. Go buy it on Coinbase."
Right.
It's that totally defeats all semblance of the purpose. But that is the way it's been, because interacting with these, especially these kind of really old proof of work, not smart contract strong chains, is just
there's
really
no
difficult.
smart contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
I mean, we've done a lot of work in order to do that, not only for Bitcoin, but also with Zcash that has UTXOs. It's proof of work, right? It's very difficult to actually deal with these things.
Exactly. And that is where our MPC structure, getting a little more into the technical
Yeah.
side of it, the fact that we rely on wallets and signatures, not smart contracts, is such an advantage because we can connect to every single blockchain
Exactly.
ever. And we really just have, I think, the best infrastructure. And again, this is what is going to matter, especially as we get to the point where more and more people are trading. There's more and more volume. And I think that, again, going back to it, like this integration with Loopscale, right? It's really important for so many different reasons. Of course, it's just the first of many, not the first, but we've already done a few, but it's kind of the next step in our journey of making Zcash completely usable and kind of composable throughout DeFi, right? The Loopscale team has done incredible work with their kind of order book structure, kind of redefining the way that risks work on chain. And in fact, it's actually very similar to the ideas of there was a centralized wrapped Bitcoin so that we could have a decentralized wrapped Bitcoin, right? There was the simple Y times X equals K AMM. So now we could have more complex order books. If you had just launched the order book, well, that actually the way it was. And there was no volume, no ability to trade because there was no kind of pool of liquidity. Now we have these massive pools of liquidity and we can build more complex order books on top. So it's really interesting, this constant evolution. And as immutable as blockchains are, they're constantly going to be getting improved, and especially the user experience. I mean, anyone who thinks that we are at a level of user experience that's anywhere close to where we're going to get in the next couple of years has no idea really what's going on because it's just improving so fast.
100%. I mean, look at what happened just over the past 3 years, right?
Yeah.
We're approaching 2026 now, right? So 2022, 2021, like DeFi UX was bad. It was really bad. It was hard to use, right? It has improved significantly, but we still need to get to the point where, someone who's non-crypto native, crypto Luddite per se could easily use it. It's getting there. Mobile adoption really helped this, right?
Yeah.
Now you're seeing people who have their Phantom, have their Jupiter wallet, and it's very easy to go in and ape via your centralized exchange. It takes some time still, right? Maybe like 10 minutes. And it should be a little bit easier. It should be very similar to logging into a social media account, right? Now your wallet is your ultimate sign-in tool for anything that you do in the internet, which is a very it's a very macro thing to think about, but your wallet is your gateway to the future of internet money.
But even that, right? If my wallet is the gateway to everything I do on the internet, do I want everyone to be able to see everything I do always, forever, and have a permanent record of it?
That's why Zcash is so important,
right? So I guess maybe going back to that, what would you say to the Zcash community about kind of what we're doing, right? Is this good for the Zcash community, do you think? And how should they view zenZEC?
Well, we want, speaking for kind of Zcash to a degree, you would expect that the Zcash Foundation, the Zcash community wants ZEC in more hands,
right?
In more wallets. It wants more distribution and better access, right?
Yeah.
Centralized exchanges aside, right? You have a lot of trust assumptions you have to make with centralized exchanges. They act as a bank in crypto, essentially, right? So what we've done is enable no on-ramp, no SECs, and now you can access Zcash, ZEC on Solana. And that is huge just in terms of broader distribution, broader knowledge too. Now, someone who's, really deep in Solana, they own all these different DeFi assets, and they're like, I have all my assets on this, Phantom wallet or this ledger, and I want to buy Zcash. Do I really have to bridge to a centralized exchange? That's cumbersome. You don't want to have to do that.
It is.
So it's very important, for what we've done is just enabling that access, that broader distribution, also the knowledge. Now you can swap all your DeFi tokens or one DeFi token into ZEC. You could swap all your meme coins that you've had over the past 2 years.
That may have not done super well.
Yeah. And you want to own an asset that has a massive narrative to it. There's tailwinds towards it. And as TradFi adoption continues to accelerate, there's going to be even more tailwinds towards it. So the TAM is going to increase. And the narrative is really here to stay, in my view, given that it didn't die. Right.
Yeah.
if it died, you know, it died,
died,
right?
yeah.
It would have died, right? So the fact that it didn't die and now is not only appreciating as a coin, but also appreciating as you know, a narrative. There's a lot of reflexivity to the asset right now.
Well, what's really interesting about this as well is like there might be a lot of, I think there probably are a lot of people who are like, okay, I don't need this transaction to be private, like this particular one, whatever.
Right.
But I believe in this narrative. Like I believe, even if I'm not like needing to go to Zcash, I don't need a shield, whatever. Maybe it doesn't matter to me right now. Maybe it does. They still believe in that narrative. They then have this new avenue, easier than ever, cheaper than ever as well.
Yeah,
much
that's true.
cheaper than ever.
Faster
to get
too.
faster than ever to get in and out of Zcash. And specifically, you know, if they want to continue to own Zcash, increase that asset base, increase this. Really, what it does is it increases the size of the shielded pool, which increases the privacy, increases the security, and spurs more adoption of the technology. So I think if you're a Zcash fan, you should be looking at everyone who owns zenZEC on Solana as someone who's kind of, you know, really helping to kind of proliferate this asset, and proliferate the adoption of privacy tech in this moment.
I think that's absolutely spot on. Echo a lot of those points. You know, I know we're approaching time here, but maybe we can talk a little bit about what's next for the end of the year. Right?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of you know, cleanup that we need to do, but you know, I've been getting asked a lot about our roadmap. So
For sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the roadmap. You know, into the end of the year, we have some work that we're going to really focus on to continue to generalize a lot of our flow and to be able to let us just pump out as many DCTs as quickly as we can. We want to get all of the main assets that users want to trade to be tradable on Solana. But it's not just about bringing it. Again, it goes back to this point. We want to bring those assets and we want to embed them deep into DeFi so they're super usable and so that kind of the Lindy of those assets on Solana starts to grow. You know, we also, I'm really excited to get zenBTC V2 out the door. This is going to have massive product improvement. Obviously, everyone knows zenBTC is kind of a yield-bearing Bitcoin that earns yield from the custody network itself. And zenBTC V2 is going to go way further in terms of having users be able to actually see the on-chain yield every single day, understand what transactions cause the yield, you know, not have it. Right now, it's very black box because we have a lot of this stuff in the background, but like, you have to go across multiple block explorers on multiple chains to be able to even like begin to get the picture.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of work to say, okay, how can we kind of make this super easy for a user to say, okay, you know, today's date, what was the yield? Click. And that takes me to a block explorer. Oh, I see this transaction actually happen. Here is the rebasing. All of this stuff that users kind of want and quite frankly expect and should expect in a yield-bearing asset.
for sure.
So I'm really excited about that because the bigger overarching point of so much that we're doing is that we're going to also create the absolute best Bitcoin in DeFi, right? In the world, I'd argue. And the reason for that is because we have a source of yield that is fundamentally sustainable and doesn't take on like really any DeFi, any kind of market risk. We've just seen with the kind of collapse of stream finance and a few others, and everyone has been following this kind of stable coins, you know, depegging story. And really what this is that it's things calling themselves stable coins that in fact are levered hedge funds. And I, as a DeFi kind of lover, like levered hedge funds should be totally allowed. And they should be something that people say, hey, here are the risks, here are the return. If this is something that fits in your mandate, go for it and enjoy the risk. And if you lose money, and that's part of the game.
Yeah.
But when they start to masquerade as like a stable coin, it's not good. And
it's like so misaligned, you know. It's like
it is,
it's like ethical almost.
It
like,
is.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like,
and so the point on that is like there's a lot in the Bitcoin space as well.
Yeah.
You know, that is very similar to that. That it's like, oh, don't worry, this is just Bitcoin with like super high yield. And people are like, okay, you know, they throw out all these fancy finance words to make it seem like, don't worry, there's no risk. Like eventually, just based on the history of hedge funds over the last 50 years, whatever it is, like eventually some of those are going to collapse.
For sure.
And people are going to be left saying, well, what happened, right? And that's something that is so core to our ethos, is that all of the yield for zenBTC has to be based purely on custody fees that scales with TVL and does not take this DeFi market risk that eventually will blow everything up. And 100%. It needs to be like that to really scale to the level that we want it, and be as safe and as rigorous of a product as what we know the on-chain world demands.
Definitely. No, I couldn't agree more. Obviously we're honed in on building out zenZEC, building out more privacy-enabled tooling, potentially with the MPC. But our core mission is also to build the best Bitcoin, build the best on-chain Bitcoin, and we need to make it, fully public on where the yield is coming in terms of a dashboard. You could really track it. Yeah, it's going to really open up the doors to multiple different partners within the Solana DeFi ecosystem that I'm really excited about as well. But just to summarize, that's towards the end of the year, right? Until let's say January, 2026, zenBTC V2 is going to come out, and we're also going to optimize our architecture on the DCT side to really enable 10 to 15, potentially even 20 DCTs in 2026. And throughout, maybe H2 of 2026, there could be some very interesting privacy tooling that we won't talk about yet, but we've been thinking about a lot. So,
I think that's all right. I guess one question I'd leave you with and ask you is as we continue to build out more assets, right? If you look at the company in 6 months, we're going to have many more assets than 2. Right? We have 2 today. We're going to have many more. And I know that a big part of our thesis is every new asset should provide more value to the existing asset. So every time we launch an asset, it should increase the value of all the existing assets. So, and part of that is, we could talk about the airdrop quickly that we just did of zenZEC. But I guess overarching thesis, how do you think about kind of making sure that every time we launch a new asset, it increases the value for everyone who's holding all of our existing assets?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say is just more value going through the MPC network, right? And that generates the overall protocol fees that we distribute back not only to rock holders via burns and deflationary mechanisms, but also to zenBTC holders, which is the most important point, right? We're not generating yield via some off-chain, obfuscating masquerade, whatever you want to call it, yield mechanism. It's really from the custody fees that we generate. That being said, that's one part, right? That's the base part about it. That's where we distribute, revenue fees to early supporters of the network. The other point alongside that is for zenZEC, right? We did an airdrop to zenBTC holders, right? We did an airdrop to rock holders, and we also did an airdrop to selected Zcash, kind of whales or thought leaders, I would say, in the industry, right? So we will continue to keep thinking about how we can incentivize people to really come on board of the Zenrock, rocket ship, I would call it, with the way we're moving now. But that's something that's going to be very core to how we approach a lot of these assets. It's not just going to be, we did it, all right, it's going to sit idle. People could set up their own liquidity pools if they want, but we're really going to think about how to create that network effect within the Zenrock kind of ecosystem.
Right, 100%. No, it's super exciting. Well, I mean, I'll say just in closing, check out the pools that we're just launching on Loopscale. Go find ways to use your zenZEC and your zenBTC as collateral. Use it as productive as you can. Check out the Orca pools and stay tuned for many more announcements in the coming weeks.